You don't understand who you're dealing with." The words cut through the cool Atlanta night air like a blade, delivered with the kind of quiet authority that comes from years of courtroom battles. Attorney Jasmine Wells stood perfectly still, under the amber glow of the streetlight, her briefcase at her side, watching as Officer Derek Morrison approached with the swagger of a man who believed his badge made him untouchable in the darkness. But let's rewind 12 hours to win this. Collision course first began. The evening had started like any other for Jasmine Wells. At 6:30 p.m., she was still at her downtown law firm, reviewing case files in her corner office that overlooked the now darkening streets of Atlanta's legal district. The city lights were beginning to twinkle below as rush-hour traffic created rivers of red and white through the urban landscape. At 34, she had built her reputation defending civil rights cases with a precision that made prosecutors nervous and a tenacity that had earned her respect even from those who disagreed with her methods. Her phone buzzed with a text from her younger brother Marcus, working late tonight at the center. Community meeting about the new youth program. "Thanks again for everything, sis." Jasmine smiled, remembering how she'd helped Marcus get his job at the community center after his release from prison 2 years ago. He'd made one mistake at 19, a mistake that had cost him 5 years of his life, but he was rebuilding now, and she was proud of him. The community center stayed open late 3 nights a week for evening programs, serving working parents and adults pursuing their GEDs. Meanwhile, across town, Officer Derek Morrison was starting his night shift with a different kind of energy. At 28, he'd been on the force for 6 years, long enough to develop what his colleagues called street instincts, but what his critics called something else entirely. Morrison had grown up in the suburbs, the son of a retired police captain who'd taught him that respect was earned through authority, not asked for politely. Night shifts in the city had a different rhythm, darker, more unpredictable, where shadows could hide anything. "Morrison, you're on patrol in District 7 tonight," Sergeant Williams announced during evening roll call. "Been some complaints about activity around the community center on 5th Street. People coming and going at all hours. Keep an eye on things." Morrison nodded, already forming assumptions about what kind of activity he'd find under cover of darkness. By 8 p.m., Jasmine was finally packing up her office when her phone rang. The caller ID showed a number she didn't recognize, but something in her gut told her to answer. "Ms. Wells, this is Sarah from the East Side Community Center. I'm calling about your brother Marcus." Jasmine's heart skipped. "What's wrong?" "He's not in trouble," Sarah said quickly. "But there's been an incident. A police officer came by during our evening session, asking questions about Marcus specifically. He seemed aggressive. Marcus handled it well, but I thought you should know." "What kind of questions?" "About his background, his hours, whether we'd had any problems with him." The officer implied that maybe we should reconsider having someone with Marcus's history around during night programs, when it's harder to supervise. Jasmine felt the familiar fire building in her chest, the same fire that had driven her through law school, through the bar exam, through every case where she'd stood up for people who couldn't stand up for themselves. "Did you get the officer's name?" "Morrison. Derek Morrison." An hour later, Jasmine was driving through the darkened streets toward the community center, her headlights cutting through the night as her mind raced through the legal implications. She knew Marcus's rights, knew the limitations of police questioning, and she knew when someone was being targeted. Her brother had been clean for 2 years, had never missed a day of work, and had become a mentor to adults who reminded her of herself at that age, smart, determined, but fighting against a system that seemed designed to hold them back. The community center sat on a corner lot, its windows glowing warmly against the darkness, the bright murals on its walls barely visible. In the streetlight, cars lined the street, parents picking up kids from evening programs, adults leaving GED classes and job training workshops. Jasmine parked across the street and walked toward the entrance, noting the patrol car that was conspicuously stationed at the end of the block, its occupant clearly watching the foot traffic. Through the lit windows, she could see Marcus leading a group of adults in what looked like a financial literacy workshop, his animated gestures visible even from the street. Officer Morrison watched from his cruiser as the well-dressed black woman emerged from the luxury sedan and approached the building. Something about her bearing in the darkness, the way she walked with purpose despite the late hour, the expensive briefcase, the confidence. in her stride, immediately put him on alert. In his experience, people who looked like they belonged in boardrooms didn't usually show up in this neighborhood after dark unless they were looking for trouble or running from it. He decided to take a closer look. Jasmine was halfway to the entrance when she heard the car door slam behind her. The sound echoed off the quiet buildings, more ominous in the darkness. She didn't turn around immediately, but she could feel the presence approaching, could sense the deliberate intimidation in the measured footsteps on the pavement. The streetlights cast long shadows, and she was acutely aware of how isolated this corner felt despite the activity in the community center. "Excuse me, ma'am." She turned to face Officer Morrison, taking in his stance, his expression barely visible in the amber light, the way his hand rested casually near his belt. She'd seen this performance before, in depositions and courtrooms, but experiencing it firsthand in the darkness was different. More personal, more dangerous. "Yes, officer. Can I ask what your business is here? It's pretty late to be wandering around this neighborhood." The question was phrased with mock concern, but Jasmine heard the assumption underneath it. She glanced at the community center, where faces had appeared at the windows, drawn by the blue and red lights that were now painting the darkness in familiar, threatening colors. Marcus was among them, his face tight with concern. "I'm visiting my brother," she said simply to Morrison's eyes narrowed in the dim light. "Your brother works here? This late?" "He does. They run evening programs." "What's his name?" Jasmine felt the familiar crossroads that black professionals knew well. The moment when you had to decide whether to play along with the performance or challenge it directly. The darkness seemed to amplify the weight of the decision. She thought about Marcus watching from the window, about the adults in there who were learning that sometimes the system worked against you no matter how hard you tried to follow the rules, no matter what time of day you tried to better yourself. "Officer," she said, her voice calm but firm, cutting through the night air. "I'm an attorney. I know my rights, and I know my brother's rights. Unless you have reasonable suspicion that a crime has been committed, you have no legal authority to detain me for questioning." Morrison's posture shifted in the streetlight, his shoulders squaring. The darkness seemed to embolden him, make him feel more in control. "Ma'am, I'm just trying to do my job here. We've had reports of suspicious activity in this area, especially after dark." "Suspicious how?" "People who don't belong in the neighborhood, causing problems when they think nobody's watching." Jasmine looked around at the quiet street, the modest homes with their porch lights glowing warmly, the community center with its evening programs and adult education classes. "And you've determined that I don't belong here?" "I didn't say that. You didn't have to." The tension was building now, drawn tight like a wire about to snap. Other residents had begun to emerge from their homes and the community center, sensing the familiar electricity of a confrontation that could go very wrong, very quickly in the darkness. Someone had started filming with their phone, the screens glow joining the street lights and illuminating the scene. Morrison felt the weight of the watching eyes, the pressure of a situation that was slipping away from his control under the cover of night. He'd approached this as a routine interaction, but the woman in front of him wasn't responding according to the usual script. She wasn't intimidated by the darkness or his presence, wasn't backing down, and her legal knowledge had turned what should have been a simple encounter into something more complicated. "Ma'am, I'm going to need to see some identification." Jasmine knew this was the moment, the point where cooperation and resistance would determine everything that followed. The night air was cool on her skin, but she felt the heat of injustice burning in her chest. She could comply, de-escalate, and walk away into the darkness. Or she could stand her ground and fight for the principle that mattered more than the inconvenience, more than the risk. She thought about Marcus, about the adults watching from the lighted windows, about every client she'd ever represented who'd been told they didn't belong somewhere they had every right to be, regardless of the hour. "No," she said quietly, her voice carrying clearly through the night air. "You're not." The night air seemed to thicken around them as Officer Morrison processed Jasmine's refusal. His hand moved slightly closer to his radio, a gesture that didn't go unnoticed by the growing crowd of witnesses. The community center's lights cast long rectangles of yellow across the sidewalk, creating a stage where this drama would play out under the watchful eyes of smartphones and security cameras. "Ma'am, I'm giving you a lawful order." Morrison said, his voice taking on the mechanical tone of authority that he'd been trained to use. Failure to comply with a lawful order is obstruction. Jasmine's years of courtroom experience had taught her to recognize bluffs, and this felt like one. But she also knew that night encounters with police could escalate beyond logic or law. "Officer Morrison," she said, using his name deliberately, "you need reasonable, articulable suspicion of criminal activity to detain me. Walking to visit my brother is not a crime." The use of his name seemed to catch Morrison off guard. "How do you know your name? You questioned my brother earlier today." Made some concerning implications about his employment. Jasmine's voice remained steady, professional, but there was steel underneath. "I'm curious about your justification for that interaction as well." Morrison felt the conversation slipping further from his control. The woman wasn't just refusing to be intimidated, she was actively challenging him, questioning his authority in front of witnesses. The darkness that had initially felt like his ally now seemed to be working against him, with phone screens creating pools of light that captured every word, every gesture. "Your brother has a criminal record," Morrison said, his voice rising slightly. "People have a right to know when convicted felons are working with vulnerable populations." The words hung in the night air like an accusation, and Jasmine felt something cold settle in her stomach. Not fear. She'd moved beyond fear into something more dangerous. Righteous anger. "My brother served his time," she said, her voice cutting through the darkness with surgical precision. "He's been employed at this community center for 2 years without incident. He's helping adults get their GEDs, teaching financial literacy, mentoring young people." "What exactly is your concern, Officer Morrison?" "That he's being too successful at turning his life around." From the community center, Marcus had emerged onto the steps, his face a mask of controlled worry. Behind him, Sarah and several program participants clustered in the doorway, their presence a silent show of support. The night breeze carried the sound of more car doors closing as neighbors came out to see what was happening on their quiet street. Morrison glanced around at the growing crowd, feeling the weight of their attention. This wasn't how these encounters were supposed to go. Usually, people complied, apologized, made excuses. They didn't stand their ground and certainly didn't lecture him about the law while doing it. "Ma'am, I'm going to ask you one more time, officer," Jasmine interrupted, pulling out her phone. "I'm going to ask you one time. What is your badge number?" The question landed like a physical blow. Morrison's hand instinctively moved to cover his badge, a gesture that several witnesses would later describe as telling. "You don't need my badge number." "Actually, I do. Georgia law requires officers to provide their badge number upon request during any official interaction." Jasmine's phone was now recording, the screen's glow adding to the constellation of lights, documenting the encounter. "You've detained me for questioning, which makes this an official interaction." Morrison realized he was trapped in a maze of his own making. Every response he'd been trained to give seemed to lead to another legal challenge, another question about his authority. The woman in front of him knew the law better than he did, and she was using that knowledge like a weapon. "I haven't detained you," he said finally. "You're free to go." "Am I?" "Because a moment ago you were demanding identification and threatening obstruction charges." The crowd was growing larger now, and Morrison could hear murmurs of recognition. Someone called out, "That's Jasmine Wells, the lawyer who won the Johnson case." Another voice added, "She got my cousin out of that wrongful arrest last year." Morrison felt the night closing in around him. What had started as a routine harassment of someone who didn't belong had turned into a public legal education seminar, with him playing the role of the ignorant student. Worse, he was beginning to realize that the woman he'd approached as a suspicious person was actually someone with the knowledge and connections to make his life very difficult. "Look," he said, trying to regain some semblance of control. "There's no need to make this complicated. You were just what?" Jasmine stepped closer, her voice carrying clearly in the night air so that everyone could hear. "You were just harassing my brother for having a criminal record? Just implying that he shouldn't be allowed to work? Just assuming that I don't belong in this neighborhood? Just what exactly?" Morrison's radio crackled to life. "Unit 47, what's your status? We're getting calls about a situation on 5th Street." The static seemed to break whatever spell had held the scene in suspended animation. Morrison grabbed his radio, acutely aware that his supervisor would want answers about why a routine patrol had turned into a public spectacle. Unit 47, everything's under control here. Copy that. Wrap it up and clear the scene. Morrison looked back at Jasmine, who was still recording, still waiting for an answer to her question. The crowd had grown to about 30 people now, a mix of community center participants, neighbors, and passers-by drawn by the lights and activity. Their faces were expectant, watching to see how this confrontation would resolve. "Ma'am," Morrison said finally, his voice deflated, "you're free to go about your business." But Jasmine wasn't done. 2 years of watching her brother rebuild his life, 5 years of taking cases just like this one, a lifetime of being told she didn't belong places where she had every right to be. It all crystallized in this moment. Under the streetlights. "Officer Morrison," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd spent years making arguments in courtrooms, "I want you to understand something. My brother Marcus is one of the finest men I know. He made a mistake when he was 19, paid his debt to society, and has spent every day since then trying to make a positive difference in this community. The work he does here, helping adults get their education, teaching kids about financial responsibility, showing young people that they can change their lives, that's not suspicious activity. That's exactly what we should want in our neighborhoods." She paused, letting her words sink in while the cameras kept rolling. "But here's what is suspicious, Officer Morrison. A police officer who singles out a reformed citizen who's contributing to his community. An officer who assumes that a black woman in professional attire doesn't belong in a working-class neighborhood. An officer who tries to use intimidation and false legal claims when his assumptions are challenged." Morrison stood frozen, realizing that every word she spoke was being recorded, documented, shared. His jaw worked silently as he processed the complete reversal of the power dynamic he'd thought he controlled. "I'm an attorney," Jasmine continued, "and I specialize in civil rights cases. I know exactly what happened here tonight, and I know exactly what remedies are available under federal and state law for this kind of behavior." She held up her phone, showing the recording. "But I'm also a sister and a member of this community. So I'm going to give you a choice, Officer Morrison. You can walk away from here tonight and think about whether this is the kind of police officer you want to be. Or you can continue down this path and discover exactly what happens when you mistake someone's legal knowledge for weakness." Morrison looked around at the faces surrounding him, some angry, some disappointed, all watching to see what he would do next. His radio crackled again with another call, giving him an escape route he desperately needed. I need to respond to another call," he said finally, the words coming out in a rush. "Of course you do," Jasmine replied, her tone making it clear that everyone present understood exactly what was happening. Morrison walked back to his patrol car with as much dignity as he could muster, but his shoulders were hunched with defeat. As he drove away, the crowd began to disperse, but not before several people approached Jasmine to shake her hand, to thank her, to share their own stories of encounters that had gone differently. Marcus finally approached his sister, wrapping her in a tight hug. "You didn't have to do that," he said quietly. "Yes, I did," Jasmine replied, watching the patrol car's taillights disappear into the darkness. "For you, for everyone here, and for everyone who can't do it for themselves." As the community centers, lights continued to glow warmly in the night, illuminating the faces of adults pursuing education and young people learning about possibility. It was clear that something had shifted. The encounter that was meant to intimidate had instead illuminated the difference between authority and power, between a badge and justice, between someone who wore a uniform and someone who truly served their community. Officer Morrison would later face an internal investigation based on the videos that circulated widely on social media. But perhaps more importantly, he would spend the following weeks patrolling streets where people no longer looked at him with automatic deference, but with the knowledge that authority without wisdom was just another form of weakness. And Jasmine Wells would go home that night knowing that sometimes the most important cases aren't fought in courtrooms, but on dark street corners where justice hangs in the balance, and someone has to be brave enough to tip the scales.